Imagine your Isekai to a magical fantasy world, but neither get overpowered nor a harem who worships you. That's right, you have to learn and grow from scratch, otherwise you'd die of starvation or get hunted by a random creature. It's survival of the fittest. Either you learn to grow and acquire new skills to excel, or you die. We follow a group of 6 teenagers who just suddenly found themselves in this world without any recollection of how they got there whatsoever. They also have no idea about who they were before opening their eyes in this world. We have a sweet and friendly girl named Yume. She becomes a hunter. There is a shy, white-haired mage named Shihoru. Both girls have different personalities, but they get along really well, and are also quite cute. On the other side, we have 4 boys, namely Minato, Ranta, Moguzo, and the primary protagonist named Haruhiro. Minato takes up the role of the priest. He's also the leader of the party. Ranta can be somewhat obnoxious when it comes to the girls, and also is quite rude actually, which is why he's the most annoying out of the bunch. As far as role goes, he's a dread knight. Then we have Moguzo. His muscles and physical abilities are extraordinary, and since he's the strongest member of the party, he is a warrior. Though don't let appearances fool you. He may be strong and bulky, but he has a kind and vulnerable soul. Finally, there's the primary protagonist named Haruhiro. He's an average individual and average guy, nothing spectacular about him whatsoever. And as far as guilds go, he chooses to classify himself as a thief. But to be honest, if you knew who his guild master was, you'd become a thief as well. Now, as you can see, each of these 6 members have their own unique class. That's right, in this world, depending on your skills, you can belong to any one of the 7 classes, which are warrior, mages, priests, hunters, dread knights, paladins, and thieves. Our group has pretty much all of them, except for a paladin. Still though, despite having so much diversity, they can't even defeat a weak and pathetic goblin. Goblin Slayer is not proud. Now, how did this team come to be? Well, one morning, when they're all eating breakfast together while trying to formulate their next course of action, they realized that they genuinely have no clue about who they were and where they came from before all this began. Now, as they're discussing this, Haruhiro explains his own experience. It happened 2 weeks ago. When he opened his eyes, he was in a dark place. He followed people's voices and ended up stumbling upon a gathering of people who were all in a similar situation. They had no idea how they got there. Things escalated quite quickly from there on out. An individual named Brittany offers 10 silvers to anyone who's willing to join the volunteer soldier squad. You'll have to join in groups though. He also explained that it's not a matter of choice because unless they join the squad, they'll just die sooner or later. A charismatic individual named Renji was the only one bold enough to argue with Brittany. He forms a party with the strongest individuals on the scene and they become a part of the volunteer soldiers squad. Unfortunately, none of our main characters make it any strong party. They're leftovers and so they form a party of their own. And of course, they're also registered as trainers of the volunteer soldier squads. On Monato's suggestion, they all start first by discussing and then joining their respective class guilds to get some experience. It's here that Haruhiro gets an entire week's worth of training from a sadistic, yet alluring woman named Barbara. She's the master of the Thieves Guild. She may be ruthless, but trust me guys, you'd want her to teach you. Everyone reunites after a week and talks about their respective experiences. Ranta makes things awkward by insensitively commenting about Shihiro's wonderful figure, and so he gets reprimanded by Yume. Okay, so after reassembling, they go after goblins. And as described before, it's all too much for them. Then it's the 13th night and they have yet to still earn a single penny aside from what they got at the beginning. That night, Haruhiro and Minato sat together and talked while everyone else was asleep. Their conversation is mostly about the local tavern and their respective training experience, but as it's going on, Haruhiro notices the red crescent in the sky. It's not much, but in that moment, he could have sworn that from where he came, the moon was not red. Anyway, the story picks up from the 14th day, and the party once again tries their hand at a random goblin. It was just one, but like before, the goblin proved to be a worthy adversary. Haruhiro lands a critical hit while trying to fend for himself, and Moguzo seemingly lands a death blow. But just when they thought that they had it in the bag, it attacks Ranta. This infuriates Ranta. He picks up the weapon and repeatedly stabs the goblin until it's an undefinable fact that the goblin is dead. Now, it should have been a moment of victory and celebration, but everyone is horrified now that they've finally taken a life. It isn't easy out there, is it? They trade in the stuff they acquired from the goblin and earn 130 copper coins. The party decides to spend the rest of the day in leisure, and so they travel around in local market to do some shopping. When they reunite, everyone watches a beautiful sunset together. They all share a genuine bond, but then, unfortunately, after the boys are done with their bath and off to sleep, Ranta tries to sneak a peep on the girls bathing. The others try to stop him, but things just go wrong, and as always, plot escalates. Later on, the other 3 boys apologize for what happened, but Ranta continues being a pain in the butt, and so Yume bestows a massive slap upon his face. Now, this anime is serious at what it does, and because of the peeping, things have become awkward between the girls and the boys. Furthermore, they are barely scraping by, spending their days in the rain, left with no choice but to wash and wear the same clothes every day, and still not getting much to eat. Things are not looking good. But then, they try their luck in some empty ruins, and end up killing a sleeping goblin. This gets them 4 silver coins, but things start getting better from there on out. By practicing tactics, they manage to kill plenty of goblins, and not only buy food and clothes, but also upgrade their weapons. Haruhito is delighted to wear new underwear, which just goes to show how hard it is out there in the real world. Later that night, Yume and Chihiro have a conversation where she encourages her to talk to the boys. It'll just be fine. When in the boys' room, Haruhito appreciates Monoto's leadership skills and is grateful to have him as a friend. It is now the 23rd day since they came to Grimgar. Next morning, Monoto engages in some much-needed small talk with Shihoru, where he emotionally supports her in feeding the doves and even catches her from tripping when she loses balance. Later, they all go back to the same ruins to hunt, and hunt some more. It's all going well in the beginning, and Monoto even mentions how they've grown as a team, but after a short little break, they come across goblins much more skilled and powerful than the ones they had dealt with before. Haruhito is hit with arrows twice. He's in critical condition, though thanks to Monoto's healing skills, he recovers. However, the situation was too much for them, so he tells everyone to retreat. Unfortunately, as they were running away, he's hit by an arrow from behind. But instead of hindering their escape, he continues to run despite the pain. And just when they reach a safe location in a random forest, he starts losing his consciousness, and sadly, he can't even use his healing powers since he had already used them on Haruhito earlier. Immediately, Moguzo carries him, and they all rush to the priest's guild to see if the guild master can heal him. But it was too late. Monoto was already dead, and therefore it was impossible to bring him back to life. Everyone is devastated. Of course, they are, because it isn't until you lose someone close to you that you fully realize the reality of death. On the Guildmaster's suggestion, they give their leader a proper funeral and rightfully shed tears for the loss of their leader, or should I say their friend. The funeral cost them 100 copper coins, 50 for the cost of cremation and 50 for the grave. Emotions escalate. Ronta first says he has already moved on from their leader's death, but after another much-deserved slap, he comes back to his senses, and then later when the 3 boys are drinking in the tavern, Ronta starts blaming Haruhito for Monoto's death. This kickstarts a heavy emotional argument, which is then stopped by Moguzo, and that's when a casual man named Kikawa interrupts them to talk about how goblins instinctively go after priests since they understand that a party cannot survive without the priest. Following this, Kikawa introduces them to a beautiful priest named Mary. They recruit her, but unlike Monoto, she isn't the type who can easily get along with others. Simply put, she's like the Ice Queen you often see in romantic comedy anime. Anyway, they all go back to the same ruins to hunt goblins, and this is where Mary's personality actually becomes a problem. They wonder what they should do about it, but she doesn't care at all. Haruhito is then at the tavern, wondering how he should handle the situation when Renji shows up. Remember, he's the guy who handpicked the strongest people for his party at the beginning. He expresses his sentiments and even offers Haruhito a gold coin so that his party can regain a foundation, but he declines the offer. That same night, when Shihoru is in the bath, Yume breaks down in front of Haruhito. She starts crying while stating how they're developing into an actual party back when Monoto was around. Haruhito hugs and comforts her, but when Shihoru looks through the window, she could only see a certain angle, and so she deduces that something inappropriate was going on. Fortunately, they clear up the misunderstanding sooner rather than later, but it does make Ronta jealous when he first hears about it. The 2 OG girls then try to talk some sense into the boys about how they should make Mary feel more welcome, but as expected, relationships like that aren't built in a day. Once again, they head off into the ruins to kill goblins. They succeed in killing 3, but also suffer heavy wounds. Mary heals Moguzo, but refuses to do the same for Ronta's bruise, which is understandable, I guess. But when Haruhito tries to clear the air, Mary shuts his words down. As time passes by, their party's chemistry becomes more and more disproportionate, though when they see Mary talk to the leader of Team Orion in the tavern, their curiosity is piqued. Just what is going on with this girl? Though as for Haruhito, he enters the rabbit hole as he starts doubting himself and his capabilities, but just then he has a vision, where Monoto tells him not to doubt himself. And so the next day they go shopping, where Moguzo gets a helmet, but when it's time for a meal, Mary refuses to eat with everyone else. Okay, this is making things too awkward. Later they consult a member of Team Orion. He explains that Mary used to heal every little thing back when she first started, but unfortunately this wasn't in the group's best interest because one time when they were fighting a tenacious creature in the Korean mine, They truly needed her help, but her magic was already depleted, and so 3 of her genuine friends, who would have otherwise been saved, ended up dying in her arms. For her, this was quite a traumatic experience, so much so that she couldn't function in the same party anymore. Hearing this, Haruhito and Shihoru became convinced that they'll keep on trying to befriend her no matter how long it takes. But Ranta is skeptical. Though while Ranta's attitude is nothing outside of the norm, hearing him say that makes Haruhito wonder if he's neglecting the feelings of the other members. The following day, it's really coming down, but when everyone is present, Haruhito tells Mary about their previous priest, his personality, and how he handled things. Haruhito relays everything. He then also tells Mary that he considers her his friend, and pretty much everyone backs him up. This results in a light yet genuine smile on her face. Yes, we're finally getting somewhere. The team then starts going to the same ruins to kill goblin after goblin, all the while polishing their skills and learning new stuff as well. Especially Haruhito, who has developed a foresight which allows him to see exactly how he should act to kill the goblins. During the night, he once again has a vision of Minato. This time, the good old friend says that he's proud of how much his old buddies have grown. By this point, a lot of time has passed since they ended up on Grimgar, and Haruhito has also stopped counting the days. Later, everyone gathers in a circle as they vow to never let any more of their friends die. Mary states that she'll protect them. The team's morale is through the roof. Just like that, they realize it's finally time to go hunt the goblins who killed Minato. Those goblins were chilling in an abandoned building. Yume is the first one to attack. She pierces a goblin's head with her arrow. They're off to a good start, and at some point, it even seems like they have it in the bag. But just then, Mary is shot from behind. This gives everyone the flashbacks of Monato's death, but she survives since she hadn't already wasted all of her healing capacity. Now, after defeating those goblins, they finally earn enough money to buy the proper volunteer soldier badges. They're no longer just the trainees. They all make sure to visit Monato's grave, where Shihoru sheds tears as she leaves a badge on his grave. It starts snowing, and Haruhito tells Mary that there are wounds that not even the greatest healer can heal, alluding to the fact that it's not her fault that her friends died. It's nobody's fault. This conversation takes a heavy burden off her chest, and so she graces us all with her smile once again. Everyone then takes a day off to relax and rest. Haruhito and Moguzo start by preparing bread. Shihoru feeds the doves and then shows gratitude to Haruhito as they watch the sunrise together. He then has some tea with Mary. Meanwhile, Ranta observes as Yume rock climbs. He does go off to go fishing though. The same night, as they're in the tavern, Kikawa tells them that the goblins of the Damuro ruins have become more wary of humans than before, so they should change their hunting grounds. Haruhito then states that they should go to Korean Mine, but of course, they would avoid the infamous kobold named Death Spots. Mary excuses herself after hearing all this and walks away for a minute, but Haruhito catches up to her. She then explains that she lost her friends at that exact same place, and so she needed some fresh air. But even so, she's just as determined as the rest of the party to try that hunting ground. Haruhito has a training session with his absolutely gorgeous mentor. He tells her about the vision of lights he sees during the fight, which instruct him where to attack. She explains that it's normal for thieves, but its occurrence is not that frequent. Alright, so the party enters Korean Mine and defeats 3 weak kobolds. But that was just the beginning. As they trenched further and further into the cave, they were able to defeat kobolds even more easily. Ranta is especially aggressive. He managed to defeat one single-handedly, but was also somewhat rude to the other members. All in all, they defeat 5 of them and acquired plenty of talismans for which they can now sell for profit. Though at night, Haruhito is seen doubting himself once again. He wonders if he's been a good leader to Ranta. He then asks Ranta about why he's always so rash with his own teammates, but Ranta simply tells him that he defeated a kobold all on his own. Haruhito replies that his actions can easily be misunderstood, but Ranta just talks back and tells him that he's weak. The next day, they return to Korean Mine to defeat some more kobolds. They dust 2 of them, but then they enter a farmland within the mine. There, they spot the dangerous kobold Death Spots and quickly hide. Mary was almost about to puke after seeing it because, of course, it's the one who took the lives of 3 of her friends. She loses consciousness and starts having a dream where her former friends are with her. Fortunately, she hears Haruhito's voice at one point and finally wakes up. She tries her best to regain her composure and then leads everyone back to safety since, of course, she already knows the ins and outs of this place. They come across the ruins of the temple and decide to take a break and rest there. But this only makes Mary recall that traumatic experience. And if that wasn't enough, they're interrupted by 3 undead. Yep, that's right. It's the reincarnated corpses of her dead friends. Unfortunately, the situation was so dire back then that she couldn't even give these 3 fellows a proper funeral. Everyone works hard to keep themselves safe, all the while evading their attacks so that Mary can purify them one by one. And whenever she purifies one, that person's spirit is momentarily revealed. This drives Mary emotional, as she properly says goodbye to her friends before they turn to ash for good. But just then, Death Spots shows up and they immediately have to retreat. They're running through a cavern when the surface beneath them breaks and Haruhito falls. Although surprisingly, Ranta was there to grab his hand just in the nick of time. Haruhito is saved, but he ends up falling instead. He was now deep into the territory of the kobolds, but he then tells Haruhito to just run. He'll survive on his own. And so instantly Haruhito makes the decision to go forward for now so that they can all later find their way back to Ranta and save him. Meanwhile, Ranta tries his best to fend off against Death Spots and the others so that he can make his way back to them before they have the chance to save him. Unexpectedly, he works his way out and escapes from the clutches of Death Spots. He does get irrationally tired, though, by the time he reaches the farmland. Luckily, Haruhito spots him, and they reunite. And now that everyone was together, all that was left was for them to flee the Cyrene Mine. Unfortunately, Death Spots followed Ranta and managed to find them. He blocks their way, but in the heat of the moment, Haruhito aggressively uses his scarf to strangle Death Spots and falls straight into a pit. This gives everyone a chance to escape while he faces Death Spots all by himself. In his mind, he has already accepted death, but even so, he's ready to fight courageously until his final breath. But once again, he sees a vision of light telling him to attack the creature's left eye. He gracefully evades Death Spot's movements as he attacks the eye and kills Death Spots. From start to finish, the battle only lasted a few minutes, but since he was pushing himself so hard, the moment he defeats Death Spots, all that exhaustion renders him unconscious. When he wakes up, he wonders if he's in heaven because there's an angel sitting beside him, but it's just Mary. He has fully healed, though. The two of them then walk outside where the other party members are delighted to see that their leader is still fine and kicking. Not only that, Ranta happily throws a bag full of gold and silver coins at him. For defeating Death Spots, they earned 30 gold coins. Remember, 1 gold coin is 100 silver coins, and 1 silver coin is 100 copper coins. That's right, our boys and girls finally made it big. When he goes to the tavern, Renji apologizes to him for how he offered a gold coin when their friend died. And then Haruhito goes back to visit Moneto's grave. There, he once again sees a vision of Monato where his old friend tells him that he has truly grown as a leader. Haruhito then returns back to his friends with an expression full of life. Every single one of them has experienced tremendous physical and mental growth, but their story has still only just begun. That's all, folks, and that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.